Okay, Paul, I wanted to do an analysis of your swing, just sort of highlighting some of the changes that we've made to your swing so far. Video on the left is before any instruction was given, and the video on the right is obviously after the changes that we've made. So I just kind of want to start with the setup. Notice how on the right you have your feet slightly more flared out, and I've drawn this box that starts down around your ankles and extends up toward the top of your head. And that box is going to give us a good indication of where your body mass is, or where your weight is proportionally either centered or back, or moving away from the target. You'll notice just in the setup position how much more of your weight is on your left side. We talked about ideally having 55-60% of your weight left. Slightly a little bit more forward handle lean as well at address. Arms hanging nice and straight. Feet flared out, knees flared out. You're in a really good position here on the right. First thing I'm going to do is just take the club back and show you a couple of key positions here. But notice how as you go from P1 to P2, and P2 is when the shaft is parallel to the ground here, how much your head and your upper center of mass has already moved away from the target. On the right, the things that we talked about was, sort of some swing keys for you was going to be that your left shoulder, you were going to feel as though your left shoulder was working more downward, just straight down in this fashion. And we talked a lot about the role of the lower body, the right knee straightening, the left knee flexing, and most importantly, we talked about spinal extension and how as you take the club away and the left shoulder works down and the right knee straightens, you would start to extend your spine in the backswing. So notice here you are at the same position, P2. Head hasn't moved at all. Right knee beginning to straighten, left knee flexing in at the ball. You're in a much, much better position here. You've maintained integrity of the low point of your golf swing much better. Go ahead and going from P2 to P3. Notice how much over here on the left, significantly more weight, all your weight back on your back right foot, really causing low point issues, really moving that low point back in your swing. On the right, once again, we have a beautiful stable axis on the left side of our body. Continue to turn. Left arm parallel to the ground here. Our weight is still forward. We've turned beautifully around our left side, starting to get into some really good spinal extension. And what I'm referencing there is, we talked a lot about this angle going up your back here. Whereas on the right, it's a lot less prevalent, and it's even less prevalent at the top of your swing. So from 3 to 4, here we are at the top, both frames. Much, much more stable axis on the right, much more low point integrity. Beautiful straight left arm radius. I really like how you've maintained the straight left arm, whereas on the picture on the left, you've got a slight bend there. So that was one of the power leaks and one of the ways that we were skewing the low point in your swing. Overall, you did an amazing job getting to the top of the backswing here. I just kind of want to recap for you, what has happened. Starting from the ground up, we saw a change of flexion in the right knee. The right knee became much straighter. Left knee started to flex in at the ball. Left shoulder worked down, straight down off the backswing, and to start the backswing. And now you're in a nice full spinal extension here, straight line down your lower back. Left arm radius is intact, beautiful straight left arm. You're just in a position now to where you just really can't miss it. Okay, the second part of our lesson was really spent about how to deliver the club from the top of the backswing. So, here on the left, let's just kind of take a look at your motion really quick. We shifted all that weight back to the right side. We moved our low point so far back that, you really had a band-aid approach here by moving your ball position so far back. Look at how far back the ball is here on video on the left, and you'll notice how much further it is on the right. So you moving that ball back was just sort of a band-aid to be able to get the club head on the ball before hitting the ground. And you'll notice what had to happen was you had to lose your wrist angles early, and that caused your impact position. I mean, not a bad impact position here. You still got a little bit of forward leaning shaft, but no leg drive, no linear, hip motion, hip sliding toward the target, and sort of in this fashion here. No, not a whole lot of that going on. Knees just sort of buckling, caving in through impact. No jump, not jumping and extending your spine at all. As a result, you started to see, really left wrist breakdown, arms not maintaining a straight radius, no spinal extension. All these things were really, really robbing you of power, and causing you to, not be able to strike the ball consistently. So that's kind of what we worked on the right this day was, the jump and tuck, and that allowed you to, actually have straighter arms, generate more speed and more power, and also have a little bit more forward-leaning shaft at impact. So from the top, notice how your hips, push beautifully toward the target. I mean, how you actually slide your tailbone forward and you start to swing from the ground up. You start with your left knee, left hip, sort of moving in this fashion. And as you're doing that, the club is dropping beautifully to the inside. That's why you're able to hit so many easy push draws. And the accumulators are releasing in a much better sequence. Notice the jump here. See the extension in your legs versus the picture on the right, or excuse me, picture on the left. And though at impact, much forward-leaning shaft, but really the telltale frame and how that kind of depicts how much better you are in this motion is just past impact. Look at how nice and straight your arms are here versus on the left. And really at this point, much better extension. You fully released the club. You've sort of raised your belt line here towards the target, and sort of here's that belt line. Versus over here on the left, you can see your knees are sort of sagging. Your right foot is not banking; it's sort of still down on the ground. Versus over here on the right, we've got this banking action. Much more power generated in this golf swing, and you made some incredible changes in just a short amount of time. Finish position, onto the finish. Look at the right knee here on the picture on the left, just sort of buckling and caving in. Remember we talked about wanting to have anywhere between 80-85% of your weight on your front leg at impact, and that clearly wasn't happening in the picture here on the left. It was probably more 50-50, and then you never really got all your weight onto your front side. But here on the right, you can clearly see your much more extension through the golf ball, much more power, just a tremendous difference. I want to take one last look at your down the line. Okay, Paul, let's take a look at your driver swing here on the left. This is what we worked on that last day. So I want you to notice how, from the golf ball, we're not making the same move that we were making with our 7-iron. Our left shoulder is not working down. It's working more around. You got a much flatter shoulder turn there. We need you to stay with that swing thought of left shoulder down, arms in, because we need to get your left arm in much more in the backswing with this driver. Here we're on a very flat shoulder turn. We've got too much left forearm roll. And what I mean by that is this, this left forearm is just sort of rolling in this direction because that is, that's indicated by how flat the shaft plane is here. If I compare you to, Grant Waite here on the right, notice how he has less roll and the shaft is more vertical. See that? Left arm is much more in too. So if I stop right here when the shaft is parallel to the ground, both frames. Take a look at where your left arm is as opposed to his left arm. Considerably different angles there. And the reason why is because in the backswing, Grant is going left shoulder down, extending his spine, left arm in across the chest, right knee straightening, left knee flexing. This is your old golf swing that you revert back to with a driver. Notice the distance, how much distance there is between, you know, your hands and your thighs. Whereas with Grant, there is no distance. I mean, his hands are pretty much covering up his left thigh because the arms have moved in. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look. Continue looking at this driver move. Too much left arm roll, not enough cocking of the left wrist. Therefore, the club's a little bit laid off. Because the club is laid off, you're going to just continue and lift your arms off your body a little bit here at the top of your backswing. So now notice how your left arm plane does not match your shoulder plane. Okay, ideally these two should be parallel to each other. So here's Grant's top of the backswing. Pretty close to left arm parallel to the shoulder plane. The biggest issue with this action is a little bit of a cupping of the left wrist. The right elbow is sort of moving away from your rib cage. It's sort of sliding back and sliding off of your rib cage. I want you to notice how at the top, how vertical Grant's right arm is compared to yours. Okay? Because your elbow has continued to move sort of in this direction off of your rib cage, that's the reason why your club is crossing parallel at the top. Okay? And from that across the line condition at the top, well, the inevitable is over the top move in the downswing. Notice how steep the shaft is coming here through your neckline. The shaft should be more here. The left arm should still be in at this position. I mean, here's left arm parallel to the ground. Here's your left arm parallel to the ground. So first of all, notice how much your left arm has shifted out this way, as opposed to Grant's left arm is still in. And this is when the left arm returns parallel to the ground. Okay? This is the reason why you were coming over the top of this driver and hitting, overdraws and slight cuts. Okay? One of the other reasons that this is happening is that your lower center of gravity, your tailbone, is not pushing forward. I mean, you're making two different golf swings. One golf swing with your 7-iron and then a completely different move with this driver. So we've got to train with this driver, and we've got to make all of the same body sequence motions that we're making with the 7-iron. So from the beginning, left shoulder down, arms in, across the chest, right knee straightening, left knee flexing, weight staying forward. From the top, the hips, the left knee, the hips push forward towards the target without spinning. That's going to allow the club to drop to the inside and the left arm to stay in across the chest longer and put the shaft on a much, much flatter plane. On to impact. Here's impact. Now, if you look at those two positions, number one, you'll see the biggest thing that stands out to me is that your lower center isn't forward. And how do I know that? Well, look at how straight Grant's right leg looks. Looks really straight. And then look at the right foot. It's the banking action that we talked about. Your right foot up off the ground, right knee sort of caving in this direction at the golf ball. those things are all indicators that your hips are not pushing forward before they start to spin out in this direction. We talked at length about that, and that's sort of your nemesis. That was the biggest thing that you did at the beginning of our sessions together that we tried to work out of, and we pretty much did when we were hitting a 7-iron or 6-iron. So now we've got to put some reps in with this driver, but the swing doesn't change. The only thing that changes with this driver are our setup alignments. Slightly more axis tilt, ball position further forward, less forward handle lean. So if you keep working on all these things that we talked about, you're well on your way to hitting the ball well. So